Hello friends, welcome back to Strategic Management. We are talking about business environment and strategy, and we are trying to analyze that how environmental factors they have to be considered in terms of their level of force which they put on a business. We have to prioritize which environmental force has to be looked at first, and then we have to structuralize everything in terms of our existence, our strategic perspective, our strategic path, our immediate strategic steps, our functionalities, our business strategy choices, which we will talk about in due course of time, and especially in terms of the maintenance of the level of our strategy. For example, if we are following growth strategy as the basic strategy domain, then how to do that, how to steer our growth strategy, how to look into environmental forces with reference to, for example, if we are turning around, and I was talking about Enfield and Mahindra when I was referring to the turnaround phase of strategy and strategy formulation, and micro level choices of cost and differentiation with reference to these kind of organizations. And you would realize after this discussion of environmental forces that buyers were considered by Enfield and Mahindras in terms of their choices, suppliers were considered by these organizations, and they started bringing on board organizations in their collaboration from abroad. For example, Mahindra collaborated with Renault, and they took their engine technology and their engine manufacturing expertise to develop a vehicle for India, specifically tailored for Indian conditions, looking into Indian buyer perspective, specifically with the with reference to buyers bargaining power, and then they focused upon suppliers bargaining power as well, and everything we talked about. And there are several examples basically how Enfield did that. So that is how you prioritize the situation in terms of, and you were very well aware of the fact that India is moving towards a trajectory of moving away from conventional engines towards EVs or hybrids, and later on hydrogen based kind of vehicles, and they definitely would have considered this, and definitely they would have been thinking in terms of, or they are augmenting their procedures, and they are going for research and development which would be relevant for them to produce futuristic vehicles within the time space which would take them towards a deadline wherein these kind of vehicles or this kind of a production system has to be kept aside, and you have to move ahead in terms of producing hybrid or pure EV vehicles and so on, renewable energy source based kind of vehicles in due course of time. Every automotive manufacturer is focusing upon that, they are concentrating upon that, they are working towards that, and there are good vehicles which are now emerging in the market in terms of being hybrid and pure EV based vehicles as well. And that is where political, technological, all these forces are coming in terms of their role on the organizational existence, and the five forces are acting upon as far as the sphere goes. And here I wish to remind you that when I would be talking about a different strategic sphere, here we are talking about competitive advantage, competition based thinking in terms of red oceans, wherein Professor Michael Porter has contributed a lot. I would be taking you towards Blue Ocean Framework by Professor W. Chan Kim, wherein I would be focusing upon bypassing the competition. But there also we have to have environmental forces in our minds. We have to consider these forces, the pressure of the forces and so on. And there also we have to think in terms of the power of our suppliers and buyers and so on, but with the perspective of bypassing the competition. So this is relevant for even if we are thinking of blue oceans many a times, and definitely for red oceans. We will be talking about that in due course of time. So till then, let's see why environment matters. Let's emphasize upon, we have tried to build up this case, but let's emphasize upon this fact with the help of an important paper which we chose for as far as this complementing our initial argument in the preceding discussion or session. And let's see what this paper contributes towards strengthening this discussion. This paper is by Reeves and Hanis, written in 2015. The title of the paper is Your Strategy Needs a Strategy. Your Strategy Needs a Strategy. Interesting title. So, and uh, the complete title is Your Strategy Needs a Strategy, How to Choose and Execute the Right Approach. Now, this paper complements our preceding discussion with the perspective of how to do that, whatever we are thinking, how to actually take it towards the culmination, the executable frame, the step, the actions. And we will be talking about the actions and the levels of actions in due course of time, and we will be talking about business level strategy and functionality associated with those business level strategies and so on, strategic steps. Our point of concentration continuously is managing strategy with reference to strategically managing value chains, organization, value chains and value webs, looking from that side to this side, strategic pathway to strategic steps to strategic pathway, reaching to the vision through mission, objectives and goals. So, why environment matters, Your Strategy Needs a Strategy says, or authors say in this paper, that what works for one organization might not work for another. That we have discussed. Authors also believe in that. Further, they add that, for example, consider oil industry. Now, the global supply will rise and fall as geopolitical forces play out and new resources are discovered and exploited. The demand could rise and fall with incomes also, GDPs, weather conditions and the like. Being external factors, the barriers for entry to the industry hence are higher. They are building an argument around oil industry. You may choose any other industry to think about similar kind of a thing basically, or to add value to your thought process. However, for someone from oil industry, making strategy for internet software industry would be difficult, as they have laid the ground that what works for one organization might not work for another. So, they further add that innovations and new companies pop up frequently, seemingly out of nowhere, and the pace at which companies can build or lose volume and market share is head spinning, and they are referring to internet software industry and so on. So, it is a huge difference, disparity between the orientation which we must have for both these industrial spheres. Further, authors add to this argument and they say that environment of different industry requires a different approach and skill sets for the organizations working in them to thrive and flourish. Although you would realize, and I am adding to the discussion and adding to the thought process of the authors here, that fundamental thought process when we talk about vision and mission and values and cultural aspects may have a role to play fundamentally to all the industries in more or less similar kind of a fashion. This cyclical aspect of organizational life cycle and the choices of strategies throughout the life cycle may be similar in terms of all the industries, but the role of different forces on different industry would definitely be different, and then how to look at it, that is what we are talking about. So, they further say that thus the strategy making processes must match the specific demands of their competitive environments. To find the right strategy for your organization, one must start at assessing the industry and then the environment, and that is what they propose, which is important, looking at yourself and then the environmental forces. Many a times authors, they have divergent views, but my job is to present all the views associated with the subject area, or most of the views associated with the subject area in front of you, so as to give you a complete composite picture. So, sometimes you look at the environment and then the industry, and that is where if you are a new entrant in the industry, and we discussed that in Porter's 5 forces model, then you have to look at the existing players with the environmental perspective and the kind of environmental pressure you might have because of the technological advancements which they have already taken into their business consideration and have adapted those, and you may not be able to follow them with the similar kind of a vigor and growth. How would you differentiate your product basically? For example, when Ghadi detergent came into existence, levers, Hindustan Lever was already very big. So, what should Ghadi detergent think in terms of competing with Hindustan Lever? For example, when Nirma came into fray, definitely there were established players including Procter and Gamble and Hindustan Lever. When Patanjali came into play, then all these were actually doing good business. what Patanjali would have thought in terms of consumer products, especially in terms of soaps and detergents and these kind of products which are into similar product categories. So that is where we are focusing upon with a concentration on competition. So now to find the right strategy for your organization, one must start at assessing the industry and the environment. According to the authors Reeves and Hanis of Your Strategy Needs a Strategy, How to Choose and Execute the Right Approach, business environment differ along 3 dimensions. Now this is important: predictability, malleability and harshness. Good terminology, appreciable, and it resonates with our thought process in terms of some metal or product and material as well. So about predictability, they say that predictability is deciphered in a manner that how far into the future and how accurately can you confidently forecast demand. How predictable is your line of industry, basically your growth, or how predictable is, for example, you may well calculate that these many houses are to be constructed anyways, this is the construction process going on, this is the population rise basically, and these many people are rising in their incomes and they would be requiring their own houses, for example housing industry. So you would be able to forecast the supply of that cement as well. So forecast demand, corporate performance, competitive dynamics and market expectations. So there is a predictability element to what we are talking about in terms of several kinds of industries and businesses. Malleability, to what extent can you or your competitors influence those factors? How strongly you can influence those factors or turn them in your favor? And then harshness, to what extent can you survive in the environment? If environment is very strong, environmental forces are very strong, and somehow you have to be flexible basically. So how well and how far you would be able to survive in that environment basically. Now there are stages which they foresaw, and those stages are presented in a very interesting manner in front of us. So the strategy palette, so you need to assess the environment and then match and apply the appropriate approach. They have sort of created a model of sorts in front of us, that you see, if you are analyzing some environmental force has a very strong dominating role to play. So how to actually adjust yourself, how to apply your strategy in accordance with that basically. Combining these dimensions or factors provides us 5 distinct environments and strategies to tackle them basically. So 5 combinations come in front of us. One they call classical, that is, I can predict it but I can't change it. So I can see what is happening around me, but it is beyond my control to be changed. For example, if a war situation is going on and route is affected basically, so I can't change, I can affect the war. So I can predict it, that what would it bring to us, but I can't change it. It's just a simile, just an example. You can choose other situations to think about that. Adaptive, I can't predict and I can't change it. I don't have means to predict that, and many a times it is actually unpredictable, and in this decade is associated with COVID-19. So definitely COVID-19 is one of the overwhelming kind of force actually, and we could not change that. We had to collate with whatever means we had. Visionary, I can predict it and I can change it. When I was talking about vision and foreseeing the role of an organization through a visionary perspective, when Jamshedji was thinking in terms of how someday India would be free, Britishers would go back and India would have its own government. So we would have our own political system, Indians would be taking key decisions for themselves, and he was foreseeing that. So I can predict it and I can change it, and that is what he was actually precisely doing in terms of actually thinking in terms of bringing those kind of businesses which would be effective for modern India in due course of time, and he was trying to focus upon how to do that. So he was predicting a large environmental change, and that was really a visionary approach from his side. He was predicting that this might happen in due course of time, within these many decades and so on. the complete thought process he would have gone through, and whatever data was available to him at his disposal those days, he would have gone through to in analyzing, this would happen, and that is where I would be utilized. We should be having steel industry or any institute of science or electric power and so on, and that is where he was focusing upon the businesses and development of those businesses in collaboration with each other. He was actually thinking in terms of creating value webs. Shaping, I can't predict it, but I can change it. So I don't know what is coming my way, but I have all the resources and acumen to change it. Basically, I am ready for anything which comes my way. Many organizations in India, when India was going for liberalization and was opening up for the globe, many organizations who were strongly doing good, or they were confident about their production processes, their acumen, their human resources and other resources, they were actually ready to come up with solutions associated with as far as competitive forces go and so on. And they could not predict what is going to happen in terms of what kinds of companies would come and what kind of policy structures would evolve, although they were thinking about that, but especially in terms of what kind of business areas would be interested in coming to India, and especially how India would be actually catching up with the world in short span of time. That was not so predictable at that moment. Basically, very few computer science courses were coming up, many different fundamental courses were strongly overpowering in those days. So we were not knowing that we would become a software power in due course of time in a very short span of time. So that was not so predictable, but then I can change it. I can immediately come to different kinds of businesses and solutions and products and so on. Wipro becoming a software company from whatever they were doing in terms of as far as consumer products go. So it was a radical fundamental change which is commendable. Renewal, my resources are severely constrained. I can't do much about anything, basically, more or less. So that is again a stage, and you see, authors, they have always been foreseeing such kind of things with the or they have been categorizing such kind of things with the perspective of what they have been observing and they have been foreseeing. So it is a lot of hard work which authors do to bring such kind of models in front of us, and that is what they have proposed, that is what they are suggesting. So on vertical axis, there is unpredictability which is low to high. On horizontal axis, it is malleability which is low to high, and then again on the third axis it is harshness, and this we have seen earlier in this figure, wherein predictability is associated with how far into the future and accurately can you confidently forecast demand, corporate performance, competitive dynamics and market expectations. So low to high. Malleability, to what extent can you or your competitors influence those factors, low to high again, and then harshness, to what extent can you survive in the environment, low to high. And then these quadrants, they evolve, wherein at one stage wherein unpredictability is very high and malleability is low, you are adaptive. Both of these, unpredictability and malleability, are low, you are classical, which we have just seen. So categorization is expressed in these quadrants: shaping, visionary, and renewable is at the back, where I can't do much about it. My resources are severely constrained. Now let us see what classical deciphers for us. Leaders taking a classical approach to strategy believe that the world is predictable, that the basis of competition is stable, and that advantage once obtained is sustainable. For example, we are in airlines business. So people have to travel, and if we have done good, we have established ourselves, we will maintain that level. For example, aeroplane manufacturing for that matter. Most of the examples you would see wherein people have established themselves with a classical approach, with the factor of that competition is stable, and they know that I will do this, they will do that, they will do that, I will do this, and somehow that kind of a relationship. So given that they cannot change their environment, such firms seek to position themselves optimally within it. Such positioning can be based on superior size, differentiation or capabilities. And you can have a graph of such kind of companies who are established players in almost an established kind of a situation, basically classical perspective. Just look at this, where unpredictability is low and malleability is also low. Then adaptive. Firms employ an adaptive approach when the business environment is neither predictable nor malleable, when prediction is hard and advantage is short lived, and the only shield against continuous disruption is a readiness and an ability to repeatedly change oneself. What kind of a technological advancement and development another company would come up with, it is not actually very well predicted or known, or on the other side some alternative might come basically somehow, and suddenly the situation would change. For example, music industry, many times and it has gone through a trajectory of unpredictable changes in due course of time. And software industry, it brings in so many different kinds of changes in due course of time as far as the whole situation goes. There are several other kinds of industries which suddenly the entertainment industry is most vulnerable in terms of as far as the whole situation goes, and there are several other kinds of products. And for this, just look at the products which have become obsolete overnight, obsolete or not being used so frequently by so many number of buyers in due course of time. Survival and success here comes from adapting to change by continuously experimenting and identifying new options more quickly and economically than others. Many camera manufacturers, they had to go for that, many could not go for that. Many wristwatch manufacturers had to go for that, many could not go for that, and so on. There are several organizations which change their complete orientation from this to that. Even in hardware production, IBM changed its complete orientation towards being a solutions company rather than just a hardware company in due course of time. Tata Consultancy Services adapted to repeated shifts in technology, be it in from client servers to cloud computing and so on. And there are several such examples. In software it is easy to find, but in several other industries still you have several kinds of examples in as far as if you look closely. For example, food industry is very vulnerable in these kind of things basically. Customers adapt to different kinds of foods so easily. Today, if you will realize, India is a hub of almost all kinds of foods from all over the world. I do not think that any country of that sort exists in the whole of this world, wherein almost every kind of global food or food from almost every place is sold, be it Italian, be it Chinese, be it Mexican, be it European and so on, and from everywhere, and including Indian food, chocolates also, Indian sweets also, halwa also, some other sweet from different country also, everything. Indians consume everything, starting from chola bhatura to burgers to fried chickens to pizzas to almost everything, and every Indian is consuming almost everything. That is also the case. It is not that you would say that these kind of people are not consuming these kind of products. So that is what we are talking about. In food industry, software industry, there are several kinds of parities and so on. And one thing which I want to add quickly here is that in classical there is a sequential relationship between analyze, plan and execute, and here in adaptive there is a sort of a circular situation when vary, select, scale up, then vary, select, scale up, and that is how the things are demonstrated. Visionary, again a sequential relationship, envisage, build and persist. Visionary firms win by being the first to introduce a revolutionary new product or business model. Though the environment may look uncertain to others, visionary leaders see a clear opportunity for creation of a new market segment or the disruption of an existing one, and they act to realize this possibility. We would be talking about this kind of a thing in our Blue Oceans segment as well in due course of time. Patanjali is a very important example in this sphere. Tatas, they have been demonstrating such examples for a long time, and the famous examples are Apple and those kind of products as such, and there are several kinds of software companies. Google has demonstrated that long back, Microsoft has done that efficiently many a times, 3M is an expert on that and so on. This approach works when the visionary firm can single-handedly build a new attractive market reality. A firm can be the first to apply a new technology or to identify and address a major source of customer dissatisfaction or a latent need. Barbie dolls, can you put here? We can think of that. Amazon under Bezos is a classic example for visionary strategy, as the authors talk about. Then shaping. And again, it's a circular kind of a relationship: engage, orchestrate and evolve. When the environment is unpredictable but malleable, a firm has the extraordinary opportunity to lead the shaping or reshaping of whole of the industry at an early point of its development before the rules have been written or rewritten. I demonstrate the rules and this is how the industry would go as I have decided. Shaping strategies are very different from classical adaptive or visionary strategies. They concern ecosystems rather than individual enterprises and rely as much as collaboration as on competition. Apple under Jobs and Novo Nordisk are example of shaping strategy. Novo Nordisk has been talked about as an example in many textbooks and in many case studies and so on. IKEA Furnitures can be one, Lego Toys can be other, and several other companies, you know, which have written history. Amul in India is a very marvelous example. Life Insurance Corporation of India is a marvelous example. Narayan Hridayalaya is a marvelous example. Arvind Eye Care, and so many. There are wonderful examples which demonstrate, you know, shaping the industry as such. Last element which authors have talked about: renewable, react or anticipate, economize and grow. The renewable approach to strategy aims to restore the vitality and competitiveness of a firm when it is operating in a harsh environment. Such difficult circumstances can be caused by a protracted mismatch between the firm's approach to strategy and its environment, or by an acute external or internal shock. Gillette Razors, Enfield, several other companies. When the external circumstances are so challenging that your current way of doing business cannot be sustained, decisively changing course is the only way to not only survive but also to secure another chance to thrive. American Express's response to financial crisis exemplifies the renewal approach that authors have coined, and from my side I have quoted one or two. So, you see, the point here is that this framework, this perspective, in association with aligning ourselves with what environment is actually projecting at us, is important, especially with reference to when we are incorporating environmental sustainability, and several other factors apart from that are changing now and then. Several kinds of inputs are coming from whole of the world. It is a globalized world after all. There are so many things now we have to consider, and every organization wants to become global, rightly so, why not? I will be coming back to you with lot many inputs in strategy and strategic management, and we will build up this understanding to the core till the end of this course. I will be catching up back with you. Till then, goodbye.